Thanks to the Birmingham Party and the conference organisers for bringing us to such a great venue. And thank you to party members for re-electing me as Deputy Leader. It's been almost a year since I was last here in Birmingham, helping the local party launch their living wage campaign. And it's been 6 months since we last met at Spring Conference in London. A lot's happened since then. We've had a hard-fought election campaign, winning our historic breakthrough into Westminster. We've had a surge in party membership as more and more people connect with our policies and principles. And we've had our share of disappointments, which I'll say more about later. Of course, since we last met, we now have a new government, in a form which few of us would have predicted. The government has wasted no time in ramming through policies that will damage our country for years to come. They can't restrain that ideological drive to hack apart our public services, and the recession is being used as an excuse. In describing the economic situation, Prime Minister David Cameron said something interesting. He said, "We've been living beyond our means." Has they finally caught up with decades of green thinking? Has he finally woken up to the problems of squandering resources and trashing our planet as if there's no tomorrow? Or was he talking about the big banks that caused the economic meltdown, gambling on the local casino with money that doesn't really exist? Well, no. It turns out that when Dave says we're living beyond our means, it's just his code for saying that the government is spending too much on public services. Now, Mr. Cameron, we know that our economy is in a mess. With 2.5 million people out of work, with 4 million children living in poverty, with the gap between rich and poor growing, we know that the government has to take action, but not the kind of action that you have in mind. This mess started with money-grabbing bankers gambling on the global casino. It won't be fixed by penny-pinching on schools, hospitals, and vital public services. Because good public services aren't a luxury. They're a lifeline to many people. Good public services are not about living beyond our means. They are about securing the means to live. Take a look at the budget concocted by Osborne and Clegg. We were promised a progressive budget. Instead, the Institute of Fiscal Studies has confirmed what many of us were thinking, that it's a regressive budget. Another study in today's papers shows that it will hit hardest on low-income working families who are already struggling to make ends meet. Perhaps we shouldn't expect more from a cabinet of multi-millionaires disconnected from the harsh realities of poverty, joblessness and low wages. Where I live in Norfolk, we're already seeing the unfair impact of these cuts. The new government has cut £10 million from Norfolk County Council's budget, and one of the casualties of these cuts is the Connection Service, which helps unemployed young people to access jobs and training. The short-term impact of these cuts will be the loss of 65 highly skilled employees and frontline advice services. The long-term impact will be even more young people spending a lifetime on benefits. In the last year, the number of young people classed as long-term unemployed rose by 40%. Does it make any economic or moral sense to tear apart the services that help young people into work? And it's not just in Norfolk. The Connection Service is being cut by councils up and down the country, including right here in Birmingham. Like other Green councillors, I've been proud to work with Unison in opposing these cuts to Connections. There's no doubt that these cuts to essential services will help those who most need it. But in the long term, they will hurt us all. Dismantling our public services is no way to build a fair society, and it's no way to build a strong economy. Since Thatcher's era, we've seen Tory and Labour governments scrambling to sell off our public services. It's all set to continue under the Condemned coalition. We're seeing social inequalities widen, industrial conflict increase, mass unemployment, and the prospect of a lost generation. It's like we're hearing a worst hits of the 80s political CD and someone set it on repeat. So what do the Condemns propose to fill the gaps in public services? Oh yes, it's Dave's big idea, the big society. Now, I'm all for volunteering, but public services need resources. The idea that there are legions of people who can work for nothing with the skills to run vital public services is simply ludicrous. I'm angry at the devastating impact these cuts will have on our country. But I'm also deeply frustrated at the missed opportunities, the chance to rebuild our economy in a way that creates jobs, cuts carbon emissions, and builds resilient local communities. Those 2.5 million people languishing in unemployment, they want meaningful work, and there is urgent work to be done. The government needs to connect the dots and give people jobs building a new green economy. We know it can be done. We've seen green councillors bringing in insulation schemes that create jobs while cutting people's fuel bills and carbon emissions. Councillor Andy Cooper led the way with the Kirklees insulation scheme. And this year, Councillors David and Anne Blackburn secured the largest free insulation scheme in the country when Greens gained the balance of power on Leeds City Council. More people in work will help the economy recover. And more people in green jobs will not just build a sustainable economy, it will help tackle a very different kind of debt, our ecological debt. As Greens, we know that we've been living beyond our ecological means for decades. We know that there's no alternative planet to bail us out if we fail to look after this one. Scientists tell us that we have just a few years to prevent runaway climate change. Peak oil is already upon us, and energy countries around the corner. Right now, we're destroying the Earth's natural resources at a rate 1.5 times faster than the Earth can replace them. We're driving other species to extinction at a rate not known since the dinosaurs were wiped out. A few weeks ago, the Secretary-General of the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity gave a stark warning to the world's governments. He said that Britain and other countries will face economic collapse unless we halt the catastrophic loss of biodiversity. The mass extinction of species and the wasteful consumption of natural resources have put our whole planet's life systems at stake. Our soils and agriculture, rivers and oceans, ecosystems and floodplains, and of course our climate. It's because these natural systems don't come with a price tag that most politicians ignore their value. It's not easy to put on a price on, say, the pollination of crops by bees, or the 40% of the Earth's oxygen that comes from the rainforests. But scientists tell us that nature's free services are worth at least $33 trillion every year to the global economy. That's almost twice the global gross domestic product. The Green Party is the only party that recognises the huge mistake we make when we devalue the environment. It's self-delusion to say that GDP is the only thing that matters and that the free market is the answer to every problem. More and more people are being won over to green economic thinking. I'm sure that one day, most will look back and wonder what flawed ideology placed corporate profits above people's lives, the Earth's resources, and the stability of our climate.